Welcome everyone to our generative AI session for Trailblazers, Unlocking the Future of AI and special guest topic. My name is Nadina Lisbon. I'm a CRM enterprise architect at NetApp and one of the co-leaders for the Frederick MD Architect group.
And my name is Justin Lisbon. I'm a Salesforce technical architect at Vacasa, and I am the other co-leader for the Frederick MD Architect group.
Thank you, Justin. And I know we have a few group leaders from Maryland here. So I saw Bhavna, I saw Evan. Thank you so much for coming. And then, of course, we have our local celebrity, Charlie, here.
The
So
dog
today-
likes me. I'm so happy that I got a round of applause from the dog. That's great.
Always a pleasure, Charlie. Always a pleasure. And so today what we're going to do, we'll have our welcome and our icebreaker. Then we'll do announcements. We'll get into the speaker presentation, and then we'll do some networking and QA. When we get to the networking piece, at some point, I will kill the recording so that way we can just network without being recorded. So with that, I figured since we were doing Chat GPT, generative AI, we would start our networking with a Chat GPT icebreaker. So what we're going to do is I've already created a prompt. I've already had Chat GPT loaded up. So we're going to continue this conversation. And basically what Chat GPT would like to know is it has a question. If you could travel to any fictional world from a book, movie, or video game, which one would you choose and why? So in the chat, just put in a message and then we'll put a few messages in and we'll do this for a little bit and let's see what on prompts and fun responses that Chat GPT will bring back. So while I'm bringing that up, if you could travel to any fictional world from a book, movie, or video game, which one would you choose and why? Don't all answer at once. Okay, so we have a few. Let's choose Jana's. And I think my messaging is slightly delayed, which is interesting. Okay, I think I grabbed Bhavna's first, so let's see what ChatGPT will say. So a fantastic choice. The world of Pride and Prejudice from the BBC Ministry is a captivating and elegant setting. The Regency era, with its grand estate, beautiful gardens, and interactive social dynamics, offer a unique charm and romantic allure. It'd be fantastic. It'd be fascinating to immerse yourself in the manners and customs of that time, observing the characters' wit and grace while witnessing the complexities of their relationships. Who else would like to share their fictional world and choices? So let me grab another one. See, I think this is Jennifer's that I just grabbed. So Narnia, another marvelous choice. So the magical land of Narnia, as portrayed by C.S. Lewis, beloved series, captures the heart and imaginations of many. Just like you, I'm sure countless children and even adults have secretly hoped to discover a hidden passage to Narnia in their own home. The allure of talking to animals, mystical creatures, and epic adventures is simply irresistible. Interesting one, Evan, with the Fountain of Youth. Fountain of Youth, a timeless and legendary concept that has fascinated humanity for centuries. The idea of an enchanting spring with the power of restoring youth and vitality is truly enchanting. It symbolizes the quest for eternal life and desire to stay forever young. Imagine the possibilities and adventures that await those who could find and drink from this mystical fountain. So, what we have here is just, again, a very simple icebreaker to help us get into what we're going to be doing today, which is we're going to be talking about generative AI. Our guest speaker, Katie, will be talking about prompt engineering. And so, this is just for us to baseline. So, these were all very good choices. So, let me see, I'll do one more and then we'll move on. So, and let me just clean it up a bit. Wakanda, a breathtaking choice, the hidden and technology advance of the African nation depicted in a Marvel universe is a source of wonder and awe. With its vibranium rich lands, magnificent architectures, and powerful cultural heritage, Wakanda is a place of immense intrigue and pride. It represents a fusion of traditional and innovation, offering glimpses into a utopian society that has managed to thrive in secrecy. The possibilities of exploration and discovery in Wakanda are boundless if only we could experience the marvels of this extraordinary nation firsthand. So thanks ever so much for all the suggestions. And so now we'll get back to our scheduled programming. So up next, we have our announcements. And Justin, I'll pass it to you to do the announcements.
So, of course, we have our call for speakers. So, if anybody has a very passionate topic that maybe they want to speak about, or maybe you have a presentation that you've done before that you'd like to kind of go over again, or maybe it's something you just want to kind of demo to an audience, that maybe it's something you want to present at maybe even Dreamforce, we'd be more than happy to have you and have you present to our group. So if you'll just follow the form, fill it out, and we'll get in contact with you. And then moving to local community announcements, we have another meeting tomorrow happening with the Salesforce admin group and the Salesforce nonprofit user group, happening locally in person if you're in the Washington, D.C. area. And the topic's Einstein GPT and the latest innovations from Salesforce, with Charlie Isaacs, who might still be here, but he said he did have to go. But it is tomorrow at 6 p.m. So if you're interested in that, definitely attend. And now we'll move to our speaker introductions. And so we have our very own Nadina Lisbon, who is a CRM enterprise architect at NetApp and also holds the Salesforce Certified Technical Architect certification. She has over 10 years of Salesforce experience and is passionate about solving complex enterprise problems as well as mentoring others. On top of all this, she is a Salesforce MVP, a MuleSoft ambassador, spoken at numerous conferences, a South by Southwest mentor, Ladies Be Architects ambassador, Will Architected ambassador, Rad Coach, and on the advisor board of Scale Up Arcs. And then we also have Katie Rudd. And Katie has been a Salesforce on the Salesforce platform and in the ecosystem since 2008 with extensive expertise in CPQ and QTC toolsets. Katie has worked in all areas of Salesforce, starting on the business side, transitioning into being a technologist, and then finally into the solution, pre-sales, and transformation. Katie drives innovation, and scalable smart solutions while having the business needs in mind to ensure a fully rounded implementation is secured. Outside of her professional endeavors, Katie creates amazing photo projects and showcases her unwavering support for the San Antonio Spurs as an avid fan. And now we'll move on to our main topic and presentation. Back to you, Nadina.
Thank you so much, Justin. And before I start, I just want to give Melissa, she mentioned Nonprofit Dreaming is coming up. So she put the link in the chat. So please don't forget to register. And with that, let us start our topic today. So today we'll be talking about generative AI for Trailblazers, unlocking the future of AI. Again, my name is Nadina Lisbon. I'm a CRM enterprise architect at NetApp. And this is a very exciting topic. Generative AI has been all over the news, and we've heard so much about generative AI. And maybe some of us have played with generative AI, but for a lot of people, they don't understand the technology that is behind it. And we see generative AI becoming more and more a part of our lives. So we want to ensure that we enable trailblazers in this incredible new world of generative AI. And so AI isn't a new topic for Trailblazers because from a Salesforce platform, AI has been natively built in. So since 2016, we had the launch of Salesforce of Einstein, and it brought a data scientist to every organization to harness the predictive insights and recommendations to work smarter and faster. Today, Einstein runs 1 trillion with a T predictions a week. That's a massive amount of AI driven insights for a company. Now, at Trailblazer DX, we had the announcement of Einstein GPT. It brought us the incredible power of generative AI to the Salesforce platform. On July 20th, just a few days ago, we had the announcements that Sales GPT, Service GPT, and the Einstein Trust Layer became generally available under Einstein's GPT generative AI capabilities. So a lot of innovation is happening for us. We have the full power of the Salesforce platform, and we know that our trusted customer data will be safe. So with Einstein GPT, it's going to help you generate trusted content from your CRM data and improve every experience across the customer 360 for your customers and your employees. We can do emails, messages, articles, landing pages, and even flows. And there's a lot that's coming up to help us in whatever role we're in, whether we're an admin, an architect, or a developer. This summer, we have the Summer of AI, which I think is an amazing name because there's a lot of innovation coming on that roadmap. So if anybody has checked out the Salesforce AI Day, they talked a lot about the roadmap and what's coming, and I'm super excited for what's happening. Now, for our architects on here, Suzanne Plattstadt, she put out a video that was Einstein GPT architecture in less than 4 minutes. Now, we won't go over that video today, but I am going to drop the link in the chat so that you all can check it out. It's a pretty good video, and it really goes to show from a system diagram perspective what Einstein GPT looks like under the hood. So with this exciting announcement about Einstein GPT, all the features that are here and the features that are coming, there's no better time to learn about generative AI and how you'll be able to use it. So what we're going to do in this session is we're going to talk about a baseline from a generative AI and really understand the fundamentals. And we're going to talk about what generative AI is, why it's important, and how we can unlock the future of AI. So let's start with a definition of generative AI. Now, generative AI is a powerful technology that is taking the world by storm. It is in the family of deep learning algorithms that can automatically create new content, so text, images, code, voice, video. And in order to generate this context, generative AI algorithms, they learn patterns and features from massive amounts of training data. So you may have heard the term machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI before. But did you know that deep learning is a type of machine learning? And generative AI is a type of deep learning. So a lot of these terms are used interchangeably, and they are distinct types of AI. So from a machine learning, we leverage data to generate predictions. The more data we feed into the machine learning system, the better it can predict. Deep learning is a type of machine learning that uses a complex algorithm, also known as a neural network, to learn and perform tasks without explicitly programmed step by step instructions. And generative AI fits in here under deep learning. So we've been interacting with these concepts in our daily lives, like autocomplete in search engines or your mobile device. But generative AI takes deep learning one step further. So what you'll see here is LLMs or foundational models. So we have our traditional deep learning method, which uses a smaller neural network to solve AI problems such as making predictions or recognizing patterns. And then we have our generative AI. It's built upon larger language models, which is LLM, aka the foundation model, which are essentially very large neural networks. These neural networks include billions of parameters, the tiny interconnections and decision making of elements, and they give rise to their capabilities, representing a huge increase over traditional models. While generative AI has been trusted in the spotlight thanks to the release of popular products like ChatGPT, many of the roots and interactions of generative AI have been hallmarks of our digital lives for quite some time. For instance, consider how your search engine knows how to complete searches for you. So when I think about these two models, I like to think about when I was younger, my parents would tell me, Nadina, don't do this, don't do that. And then as you get older, you start discerning certain things. So you know that the stove is hot, you won't put your hand on it because you've gotten all those different reactions where maybe you've touched it and it's been hot before, but now you know better. And so as we move into these large language models, we're essentially feeding it tons and tons of data so that it can essentially start to predict, start to understand, and really start to make sense of the data. And so, as we talk about the rise of generative AI, there's three key concepts we have to consider. So, more data, availability, or large amounts of data. So, just think about all the things that we've been doing for the past years and years and years. We have a lot of data on the internet, websites are going up every day, we're communicating, we're texting, we're on social media. All this data is just being fed all over. And think about things like your, let's say, digital footprint. So you might be on social media, you might be on LinkedIn, you might have all this data that you're putting out about yourself. We also now have better algorithms. And so when we think about what we're able to do, what we're able to discover with these patterns, when I go and I start to say search for myself, I can see different things come up. I can see things like, oh, I'm featured on an article for Salesforce, or my YouTube channel, or my Trailblazer me might come up. So all these things, as like you're searching, the algorithms are getting better because they understand who you are, they understand the data that you're giving it. So if I, for example, give an image today of myself, I'll see a lot of different pictures come up because it knows who I am in different forms. And then we have large amounts of computing power. So with the large amounts of computing power that we have today and the sheer amount of data that we essentially have the ability to now process this data, make sense of this data. And so with these three components, this is how we're able to really move forward when it comes to generative AI. We have more data, better algorithms, and better computing power. So we've talked a little bit about what generative AI is. Now we should talk about why it's important. So I know for a lot of people, when generative AI first came out, and as we're getting a lot of discoveries right now, there's always been this type of worry and this type of what's going to happen with this generative AI. Things are moving very quickly. So, where I want to baseline you all today is that think about when you first started in the Salesforce ecosystem. Think about how that interaction was. For some people, it might have been accidental. For some people, it might have been a change of careers. And for other people, it might be intentional. So you've spent all this time learning Salesforce and learning all these different capabilities on Salesforce, and you're still discovering them every day. But you're at a mindset where when new things come, new badges come, you're excited. So with generative AI, we should start shifting our mindset to this isn't something new. This is going to be a capability that will help us, and not just on the Salesforce platform, but overall. And so as people are talking about generative AI, there's an IT survey that says 67% of IT leaders notice that they're prioritizing generative AI in the next 6 months. Businesses are excited about how huge the potential can be for generative AI. And every business is talking about some strategy around their generative AI. How are they going to enable generative AI? And this makes it really important for us as trailblazers because we need to help our business counterparts. We need to help the business in general understand the underlying technology, how it might be able to transform the way we do business, and also how we can power our company via AI. So, as businesses are excited about the potential to drive efficiency and productivity with the help of generative AI, interacting with generative AI for the first time can be pretty mind-blowing experience. So, a lot of people, when they first started using it, I know when I first started using it, I asked it a couple things. First, I asked it questions that I knew because I knew I could validate that very quickly. Then I started really playing around with it, and I'll tell you, my first few prompts, they were not the best. But as I've been playing with it more, I've become like, okay, I need to start asking these types of prompts. And I like to do little things like, help me write emails. And you can do other things like have it write poems in different perspectives or in different voices, or what I just did with that icebreaker, right? Where I said, I literally yesterday while we were talking about this, was like, we need an icebreaker. We're going to be talking about generative AI and chat GPT. Let me see if chat GPT can generate an icebreaker for us. And we had to change the prompts a couple of times, but we eventually got that icebreaker that you saw with, again, good input to the system. And so it's critical to innovate responsibly with generative AI. And that leads me into our next set of slides, which is our 4 principles to use generative AI responsibly. So, from a Salesforce perspective, and from many companies, these principles, they might have more or less, but these guiding principles will really help us. So, trust, security, accuracy, and empowerment. Trust. We need to make it clear when the content is AI generated, following your company's guidelines around usage. I know a lot of companies are telling their folks and telling their users, don't use the public models, or a lot of companies are trying to enable private models so that, again, company data is not lost. From a security perspective, we want to protect personal identifiable information and proprietary company information. So just think about the things that you're using generative AI for. We don't want to put our company's secret sauce in a public model, because then it's going to become public. And with the right prompts, people will be able to search. So could you imagine somebody searching for your company and saying, I wonder what their strategy is? And because somebody was irresponsible and put it in there, then you have a whole playbook of their strategy. It's pretty scary. And then, of course, accuracy. When the generative AI model that we're using, or if we're using Chat GPT, another one is Bard, we have to always review and revise the context that we get back. We can't assume that AI is always going to be correct, or that it understands how we're going to use that information. And then, where possible, use generative AI as an assistant to supercharge your capabilities. So, with new technology, there will always be risks. There will always be risks. So, how can you approach generative AI and understand its limitation and common concerns? So, here are a few main concerns of generative AI. So, a lot of people talk about hallucinations. The AI, the model is hallucinating. What they're really saying here is, from a generative AI, it's a form of predictions, and sometimes those predictions are wrong. And incorrect responses from your generative AI models are known as hallucinations. So, with any AI generated text, it's super important to review the content and ensure that it's accurate and correct. So, the same way where you would know, if you know what you're asking and you know the right response, then it's really easy to validate. But if you're having it help you with something more complex, you should still look up sources. You should still try and find out exactly what it is that this model is producing to make sure that you're not getting a hallucination. Then we have our data security. So we have to protect our personable identifiable information and the company's proprietary information. So when you're using AI services, again, trust is critical. We also have plagiarism. So, with our large language models and AI models for image generations are typically trained on publicly available data. There is always a possibility that a model will learn a style and replicate that style. So it will plagiarize what it's giving back to you, because this might have been something that somebody produced, or content that they had where it's copyrighted but it's publicly available. User spoofing is another one. So it's easier than ever to create a believable online profile. And some of the things that I see people do with generative AI, I'll tell you, I haven't even done. There's a really cool one where people are doing like AI art. I personally haven't done the AI art because I'm very worried on what they're going to use that image for later on. And I haven't had the time to read the terms and conditions. So it's definitely one of those things where you don't want your likeness, you don't want your digital identity to be used in a malicious way. And fake users can look and interact like real users. And it's a very interesting and scary thing to think about. But these things can happen because the models are so good at recreating your imagery, recreating voices, etc. And then sustainability. So I mentioned before, the computing power required to train the AI model is immense. And the processing to do the math requires a lot of power to run it. As these models get bigger, so do their carbon footprint. Fortunately, once a model is trained, it takes relatively little power to process the requests. So a lot of the work goes into the initial training of the model, but once it's been trained, then it becomes less power. And renewable energy is expanding almost as fast as AI adoption, which is always a good thing. Now, if you want to learn more about generative AI, there is a trail mix that I will drop in the chat so that you can do the AI skills quiz. So now let's have a look at how we can unlock the future of AI. And it's really simple in 3 steps. So we need to stay up to date on Salesforce AI. Now, as we know, Salesforce has their AI news page. If you follow things like Well Architected, if you follow a few people like Charlie Isaacs, you can always see what's the latest and greatest that's going on in Salesforce AI. And we need to learn the generative AI fundamentals. So that trail mix that I sent you just now in the chat will help you to start baseline and start thinking about it. And we need to get ready for data centric AI because we're here. Now, again, it's a lot to learn. Everybody, I feel like every time I look around, somebody else has a new model. Some people have open models. A lot of companies are looking to do private models. Salesforce has their partnership with ChatGPT, so they've enabled a lot of capabilities for us. And so sometimes it can seem daunting, right? That how am I supposed to keep up with all this information? Again, the biggest thing to think about is just like how we have those Salesforce releases that have hundreds and hundreds of pages, we always have a video, we always have release notes, and Salesforce as a company has been putting out information about generative AI, talking about how they're using their models, and a lot of other SaaS companies are doing the same. So once you start plugging into the right information and start to really follow those videos and start learning about, okay, what's next, what's happening, how are those capabilities being done, you can start shifting your mindset into, I'm looking at a lot of things and maybe it's not applicable for you today, but it's something you can keep in mind because in the next 2 to 3 months you might hear your business talking about doing a project or looking at doing generative AI. So you don't have to wait for Salesforce generative AI features to be in beta to get your hands on generative AI. You can start using free generative AI tools today. So as you saw what I did earlier, I was using ChatGPT. I also use Bard. There's a couple of few things that I use out there, but again, I use them very generically. So even if I'm writing an email, I keep it very generic. If I need to have a specific persona in there, I might tell the prompt to say, have a persona that is either gender neutral or I need this to be a male persona. I might even say, put in a placeholder for a name so that they will actually put their person or something like that. Or I might use, sometimes I use Justin's name as my placeholder name. So when I see his name, then I can replace it. But things like that, right? And the first thing you can do when it comes to generative I talked a little bit about it, is really understanding prompt engineering. So prompts are how you interact with the generative AI. The better you are at putting in prompts, the better output you get. So good input, then you get good output. But if you don't have the best prompts, then the AI takes some time and you have to ask it like 5 billion questions. Maybe not 5 billion, but so natural language prompts are inputs used to prompt the generative AI. And you can experiment with tools like I mentioned, Google's BART, OpenAI's Chat GPT to start really familiarizing yourself with it. And you could do simple things like you could write a friendly email, or text when a contact gets converted to an opportunity. You can write simple statements. You can do slogans. You can write poems. Really, the sky's is the limit when it comes to experimenting. Literally yesterday, I needed to summarize an email for work on some comments from a Salesforce document. So what I did was I took two links from the Salesforce document and I said summarize based on these links in Bard, summarize this and give me the most important information. So it surfaced it up. I said, okay, this is decent. Then I said write it in an email form to have the bullets. Once I got that, again, this was information that was public. It was literally on the help and training documents. And I was like, oh, I really don't have time to sit down and read this entire document. I know the gist of what I want to say, but let me see if Bard will be able to summarize it for me. And it did a pretty good job. Now, I did have to take the content that it produced, look at the numbers that it gave me back, validated that those numbers were correct, but I had the help documents that I was referencing, so it was a bit easier. Now with Chat GPT, especially when it comes to using the model, that model specifically is trained up to September 2021. If you want to have it look, let's say on the internet, you might have to use what they call Chat GPT 4 and use a plugin. So that's kind of a difference there between Bard and Chat GPT. But again, when it comes to using anything with generative AI, if your company has specific security policies on how to use these generative AI tools, make sure you're following your company's policies and guidelines and not putting company data in the public models. So here's 3 tips for expert prompt engineering. So discovering how generative AI can assist with your daily work. So providing context. Always ground prompts in your own knowledge to provide important context. I always laugh about this first one because when I'm speaking with my husband, sometimes I'll start a conversation that's 2 weeks ago and I'll just start the conversation. And the first thing Justin will say is he'll be like, what's the context? And I'm like, you should know this context because we talked about it 2 weeks ago, right? So when it comes to the generative model, if you tell it to write an email, it's going to write an email, but it doesn't know why. Versus if you tell it to write an onboarding email for new Salesforce user in a financial service company, then it will write a better email. You can even start it with saying, act as a copywriter because I need you to do this, or write it as if you're an executive. So even giving it the persona on how you want that email. Check to see if the tone is correct, right? Those are things that, again, that's something you can do in the model and you can practice with. Doesn't have any company data and you're literally just playing around with it. You want to be, again, security minded. So I think I've said this like 5 billion times on this call. We're not going to put any confidential company information or data into a public generative AI tools. Anything where it has to do with company secret sauce, if you don't know if it's company secret sauce and you have to even think, it's probably company secret sauce. Don't put it in the model. We want to keep our confidential information confidential. We want to ensure that anything like source code, any deal information, customer information, always follow your company's security policy. And if you're not sure where the security policy is, I guarantee you they have a security policy on it by now. And again, review and revise. Review any outputs to ensure accuracy. Do not deploy solutions directly into production. But again, we would never deploy anything into production without testing, right? And avoid copyright issues. So ensure the content is relevant and up to date. So that's where if you're using ChatGPT and you're using the 3.5 model, it's trained up to September 2021. If you're using Bard, Bard is on the internet. And so it has access to the internet. So you might get more searches and things like that. So with that, we're going to, I'm going to copy you this link. We learned about generative AI, why it's important for Trailblazers, and how you can unlock it today. That's not the end of the presentation because we have our special guest speaker who will also be up here in a minute, Katie, where she's going to be talking to us again more about prompt engineering. She's also going to have her recipes that she'll be talking about and really showing us how to be really good prompt engineers. So, with that, I'm going to transition to our special topic today, which is through the AI looking glass and cooking with prompts. So, Katie, if you're still out there, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nadina. That was awesome. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So first, let's start with a quick history lesson. So obviously, Nadina talked about the fact that AI has been around for a while, but it's been around for maybe even longer than some folks realize. It actually first started back with the Turing test that Alan Turing started way back in 1950, and as you can see here, back in 1956 is when that term artificial intelligence was first coined. So been around quite a while. So obviously there's been a lot of advancements and incredible things that AI has done through the years. But let's fast forward quickly to the 2010s here on this timeline. And in the 2017 line there, where Google released a paper and they essentially basically went from where using transformers, where you could go from words to sentences. And that is what enabled us to be now here in the 2020s at this breakneck pace of AI advancements that we're at now, including ChatGPT, Bard, etc. Now, with all that, we know AI seems scary, and it is, right? Sorry, can you go ahead and go to the next slide, Nabina? So AI seems scary. We've all seen the headlines. It may have even affected some of us. And will AI take some jobs? Yes, it absolutely will. Will it suppress and not have potentially jobs that would be there for us in the future? Yes, it will. But it will also create jobs. And but as part of this, we do need to. Can you go ahead and go to the next build? But we'll also create jobs. But in order to do this, you have to have a certain set of skills, and some of those skills we're going to talk about here. So, and obviously Nadine has already referenced those. But as we've heard, like this is just obviously it seems like sorcery to all of us as we, or at least to me anyway, as we go through these things. But what it really is, even with the scariness about the jobs and all of these things, what it is an accelerator. And I really want y'all to think about it that way, because and we're going to talk about some other, Nadine's already talked about some of them. Sorry, can you go to the next? What's happening on the computer? Sorry, that might be my computer's freaking out. 1 second. So AI is an accelerator. Sorry, someone was calling me via huddle. So AI is an accelerator, and all that's true. However, while AI may not replace you, absolutely someone using AI will. So let's dive in to some of the ways in which you can use AI. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but really I just want to talk about, again, back to that, using AI to augment, your tasks and your role, right? Nadina's already talked about several of these, and we're not going to go through these in detail, but really from an admin, whether you're a business analyst, whether you're product owner, obviously there's a lot of overlap here as well, but looking at it through the lens of what tasks do you have to do, right? Like I currently do a lot of consulting work, right? So like, what are some industry and vertical best practices? For instance, if it's not an industry I'm familiar with, if you're an admin, you can use this to help you, do formulas and validation rules. If you're in sales, like I used to be in pre-sales, as Justin was talking about, right? So one of the things I would have loved to have had at that time, which I did not, where sometimes to really get an idea of some business problems to solve, it was, some of the challenges facing the company. There are these, if it's a public company, you have these 10K or 10Q docs, right? And being able to, summarize those easily. Well, you didn't. You sat down with a bag of popcorn and read through all these long documents to kind of figure out what the what some challenges the company was facing. So anyway, these are just some ideas to kind of get you thinking about some of the ways, and obviously there's so many, there's a myriad of them, but just some ways in which AI can supercharge your role. Go and go to the next slide. So first we're going to talk about, so now we're going to get into that, kind of that perfect prompt recipe. So this is the template. We've got the structure, right? And just as Nadina was talking about, right? You can't just yes, you can, just put in something simple like, what's the capital of Maryland, or, whatever the case may be. But really, to get that best outcome, you want to provide context, ideally with a specific goal. And if you want it in a specific output format, right, you need to specify that. But the two of the more key items here are breaking down tasks and providing examples, right? So now we have our recipe. Now let's talk about some of the seasonings, which is the some bonus tips where you can use here as part of the structure. So rote prompting, right? Like Nadina already talked about this. Act as a persona, right? Now some of these are just fancy terms for things that make sense. So act as a persona, right? I would never act as Justin, but you can say act as a Gartner analyst, as an example, right? Those types of things, like just to kind of get, again, just giving that context is super important. Shot prompting is just examples, right? Am I giving 0? Am I giving 1? Am I giving several? Those types of things. Priming and chain of thought prompting, that's really kind of building on whether you're breaking down tasks in the fourth bullet on the left, or whether you just want to build on what information chat GPT, or again, Bard, whatever the tool is that it's giving you. And this final one, this one's really interesting. Now, this is just something I came up with, and this is super important. And Nadina touched on this as well, which is in and out prompting, right? You want to, when you're prompting, you want to bake accuracy in, and you want to then, when you want to prompt bias out, right? So this is incredibly important, both from a bias perspective, because we all know that the world is biased, and as is our language models. So there's ways in which we can prompt that out, and again, prompt in additional accuracy. And then just as some bonus items, we'll call them garnish for purposes of the recipe here. Just some advanced parameters. These you're only going to be able to get, except for the final one, you're only going to be able to get these in like an OpenAI playground. So you probably won't get these in like other chatbots. Like they're just not going to have these. But I'm not going to go into all of them. But like temperature, like one example of this is like you can have because again these are language models, so they're sifting through these billions of words and sentences. So how random do you want those responses to be? And just skipping forward to like frequency and presence penalty, and we have resources that that will kind of explain all of these. But frequency and presence penalty, so like Humpty Dumpty sat on a blank, right? Most folks know that it's Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Well, you can adjust that such that both the temperature and the frequency and presence penalties, such that you get a totally different answer. You don't get wall, you get something else, right? So there's just ways you can play with that to really get definitely some interesting responses for sure. And this last one is it's definitely obviously not a parameter in terms of a setting you can set inside OpenAI Playground or any other tool. But philosophy, which we'll see in the next example, storytelling and creativity. These are incredibly important, as you'll see as we go through these prompting pieces. Next slide. Thank you. So here are just some samples, right? So so I know philosophy seems way out there in terms of what you're prompting, but think about, it's about context. It's about giving ChatGPT or these whatever chatbot tool you're using, more context. And this is really deep context. So think about marketing from the perspective of, I need to be able to persuade people, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales. Like here's some examples, right? What's a successful marketing campaign? And then the other piece is here, I'm a marketing executive startup, right? And I want a blog post. I want a business plan. I want, whatever the case may be. There's all these, I want to, some sort of campaign that I want to create as part of this. But anyway, those types of things. Again, you're giving their context, you're giving examples. Then the next one here, which I think this is super interesting. So you can also use this for career to act as a mock. Basically, if you want to do a mock interview, you can have it act as an interviewer. So you can, again, you're basically saying, here's how I want you to behave, here's the response I want, and here's the context, right? And then the last one here on career, this one I've got some very interesting responses here, but provide me a roadmap for learning and becoming a Salesforce architect in the Salesforce ecosystem. That could be architect, it could be admin, it could be developer, it could be whatever you want it to be, right? But it's actually pretty robust in some of these examples. And then the final one we have here, this is where you're not going to put in this word salad, but again, this kind of layers on a lot of the concepts we've talked about, which is I want you to act as a Salesforce architect. And I would also encourage you here to say, do you understand? I want you to act as a Salesforce architect. Do you understand? And then the model will come back, again, whatever tool you're using should come back and say, yes, I understand. And then it will give you a description of what it is, of what that, in this case, Salesforce architect. And then you can decide, hey, is this, does this make sense? And then you can correct the model, right? If it's not correct. But if it is, or after you've corrected it, then you can start layering on some of these, right? I want to provide some details, and I want you to involve analyzing business requirements, performing gap analysis, mapping. And this example actually had some things that aren't applicable to this type of role. So again, you really need to use, as Nadina said earlier, the knowledge that you have. These things do not know everything. They seem magical. They seem like they know everything, but you have to use your own knowledge to be able to understand and make sure that it's not hallucinating, it's not giving wrong information. So anyway, the final piece here on the technical solutions here is that, again, you're layering this on, and you just want to say, my first request is I need to integrate an ERP system, but then you keep layering this on. And this is sort of similar to chain of thought prompting, but again, because you wouldn't necessarily want to put this whole thing directly into ChatGPT, you definitely want to layer these pieces on. Okay, next slide. Okay, so first let's talk about, so the next piece we want to talk about is AI jobs and use. So obviously this says jobs, but really you can also think about this as an income stream, right? You don't necessarily, yes, jobs are important and we all want to be employed and have money to eat and do the things we want to do, but also think about this in terms of, whether you want to, I don't love the term side hustle, but there's lots of ways in which you can approach this. So from a skills perspective, right, you have prompt engineering, which we both Nadina and I have both talked about, but you also have this idea of prompt templates. And really just think about prompt templates as, obviously prompt engineering is your kind of ad hoc entering information. Prompt templates are like, obviously they're templates just as it sounds like, right? So if you think about like a customer service chatbot that most of us have, probably all of us have interacted with, right? They're using templates, right? Just think about that in just basically almost any aspect of how you would potentially use these. Obviously, ChatGPT and any other chat or other AI tool, AI automation and language model training, these are exploding right now. So, and when we get to the roles piece, we'll see a little bit of this. And then these last two, while they're not, tool and AI related, they're incredibly critical, right? You need to, kind of be thinking about mental models and thinking about, how does the system work together? Again, this just goes back to, you need to kind of, to a degree, at least know a lot of what you're talking about. And so that way you can judge what and make sure that what these models are giving you is accurate. And creative thinking, right? Like, it's not going to be able to tell you, it's not just going to randomly give you information. You have to ask it. So you have to know what to ask it. And then of course the outcome-based problem solving. You cannot come to this. It's less than ideal. It's a suboptimal. You will get a suboptimal answer if you come to ChatGPT with a solution versus asking what problem you're trying to solve. So that's another key thing to think about. And then for roles, right? So some of these are made up, like GPT specialist. That's totally made up. Someone made that up so they could sell some training. But honestly, a lot of job descriptions now do have, do you know ChatGPT? Do you know GPT? Those types of things. So again, just think about it through that lens, not necessarily the actual role name itself. AI and machine learning engineers, these exist today. So just, kind of keep an eye out for that. And there's some training we have in our resources that we're going to be sharing. A large language model engineers, right? So we talked about on the skill side, right? Talking about AI automation and language model training. Well, you need, We need people to be able to work to do that type of role. And these last two um, are pretty new. So AI ops is really just IT ops for machine learning and AI. And again, these are roles that have been hired for. Not a ton of them, but they're up and coming. And same with machine learning ops, right? So DevOps for machine learning, and these roles exist today. And then moving forward, right? There's some emerging roles, which AI UX, right? Think about how you want to interact with that chatbot, especially for if you have a private chat, a private model that you're using internally for your company, right? How are users going to interact with it, right? Dev tools, infrastructure, agents can go a lot of different ways. LL ops, which is just machine learning ops for operationalizing LLMs. Then we have different types of LLM tools, and then of course your open source models such as training, fine tuning, referencing, and evaluating. And then finally for this slide, go ahead and do it one more time, Nadina. Sorry. So obviously Nadina, as she said at the top and in the chat, she'll be sharing these slides out, but there are some resources for you, which obviously will have the slides and a lot of resources. But really the key point here is yes, there's a lot of change coming, but you've already learned Salesforce, so let's all raise up together and learn AI together. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much to Nadine and Justin for having me this evening. So much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Katie. Before I let you go and before we get into networking, one question for you. What was the first prompt that you did with either ChatGPT or Bard?
Oh, that's a good one. I know I promised you that I was going to have a better answer though. I failed.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. We'll tell me, what was the first prompt?
I don't remember. Okay, my first prompt may have been, and I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but will our AI overlords come and take us? Just as a joke to see what it would come back with. I don't remember what it came back with, but that was pre when it was saving, before it was saving responses. But anyway, yeah. So I was joking, obviously, but
yeah, no worries. Like I literally had ChatGPT. There was like one day I was like, what if ChatGPT can write me a story? And I spent maybe 45 minutes creating an AI story, a whole persona and a whole character. And I have that prompt saved still. So every now and again, I go back and visit that story. So it's all good. But Katie, thank you so much for speaking. I'm so excited to move into the networking portion. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop the recording. People can come off camera and we can have open, honest discussion. So let me